So Samsung's been iterating on this concept of a folding phone for a couple years now, and I think it's safe to say that with the new Galaxy Z Fold 4 and Z Flip 4, they finally worked out most of the bugs, and by many standards, they're ready for mass market adoption. But if you're tired of your rigid single slab smartphone and you want something that folds, which one is actually the right one for you? The Fold or the Flip? So rather than just doing a straight up review of the Flip or the Fold, I wanted to kind of compare these two to help you decide which one is actually the better phone for you, and also from a bigger picture, what's the better route for folding phones to go? Because these really do completely different things. They have totally different experiences. And so I want to talk about the experiences from productivity to just relaxing and hanging out on your phone, to photos, to fun features, different things you can do with these, and of course, using them as an everyday phone. So let's start off with probably the most interesting topic, in my opinion, between these two phones. And these are the fun features, is what I would like to call them. The things that you can't do with a normal phone that are just really cool to do with these. And a quick example would be on the Z Flip 4, when you're done with a call, you can just fold it up like that, it hangs up. Things like that that are just a cool benefit of the design that you otherwise wouldn't see. And being that these fold in completely different directions, you have very different features here. So, I mean, just right off the bat, looking at them, the Z Flip 4 starts as basically like a smartwatch on the outside. That's really all you're able to do with this, plus the cameras, of course. And then it opens up into a normal smartphone. So when you have it open, by all intensive purposes, it's basically a regular phone, but folding down like this gives you a more compact design. Now, the Fold 4 starts off as a normal phone and then opens up into a more tablet-like phone. So as you can see here, you're gonna have a lot of differences. Besides just hanging up phone calls by closing your Flip, which by the way is very, very satisfying, you also have the added advantage of reduced distractions. So with this phone, you'll get notifications on the front and you can interact in a very limited way with those, but if you ever want to use your phone, you have to very deliberately open that. So it's a lot harder to just kind of casually sign in and interact with notifications, and it feels more like a deliberate attempt, which for me, helps me avoid more distractions. And talking about phone calls, with the Fold 4, I would say that it's kind of a good and a bad thing here. The bad thing is that it is a very large phone, so it's kind of annoying to hold up to your ear the whole time, but the advantage here is that because it's thicker, it does give you a little bit more of an ergonomic way to hold your phone, so you can kind of wrap around like that, rather than on like a thinner phone when you kind of just pinch it. And I mean, not that it makes a huge difference. Of course, when you start using the Fold, one of the first things you'll notice with this new interface is that you actually have a taskbar on the bottom. And this is a massive improvement. In my opinion, this makes this phone really truly capable of multitasking. So you can have a whole bunch of apps on the bottom. So if I open like Brave, like a browser, on the bottom, I can switch between Spotify and my camera and everything else down there. And so it feels a lot more like a Windows experience on a phone like this. And in addition to that, you can actually have, legitimate multitasking on here by moving around different apps. So you can do a split screen that, unlike a traditional slab phone, like if you try to split screen on a tall rectangle like this, you just have a top and a bottom. It's not really that useful in my opinion. Whereas on this, you can very easily have the same experience as two side-by-side phones, but it's just one phone, so it's very continuous. And I think that gives you a great experience. And with the Fold 4, you have an uninterrupted display. So as you can see, I mean, some camera angles make it look like the selfie camera is very obvious, but realistically, when you're using it, you don't notice that, and it does a fantastic job of covering that up. On the contrary, when you're using the Flip 4, you are able to see that selfie cutout camera the entire time. There's no pixels to cover that. And so it's like a normal phone experience, which is kind of to say it's a disadvantage there. The Flip is, however, more pocketable. So if you are, someone with smaller pockets, like female clothing has like the tiniest pockets ever, if any pockets. And so that would be where this could be very advantageous. Or what I was using it is, if I go for a bike ride, I don't want to have a phone in my pocket. It's probably going to fall out. And so some bikes have like a little pouch like under the back seat, for example, that definitely wouldn't fit a larger phone like the Pixel 6 Pro. But this, as you can see, is substantially smaller and fits in that pocket absolutely no problem at all. As a side note, we talked about the Galaxy Watch. We're talking about the folding phones. Next, as you guys might guess, is going to be the Galaxy Buds 2 Pro. So if you guys want to see that video, be sure to go down and click the subscribe button. I have a lot to say and a lot to compare those two. You definitely don't want to miss those videos. It's really an interesting iteration on the Galaxy Buds. Getting back to the Fold 4, this is compatible with an S Pen, which allows you to take notes on here or doodle or do whatever normal S Pen stuff you would do. However, there is no silo for this, so you'll have to either get a case that holds the S Pen or just throw it in your backpack separately. As far as using these phones in a semi-folded position, I find that I don't personally use the Z Flip 4 in a folded position much, unless it's just sitting on a table and I want to, I don't know, see the time or something, but even then, it's very rare that I'll do that. Now the Fold, however, I find that I am actually using this in a semi-prop position pretty often because I can just lay it down and either watch videos or read the news or something like that, and I don't have to hold it up the whole time. I don't have to look down too much. It gives you like a nice angle, especially if you are, for example, on an airplane. Like a lot of airlines that I fly, like American Airlines, they just don't have a good spot for your phone, and so having a phone that props up like this, I think is really advantageous. So next, let's talk about one of the most important features of a phone being the cameras. These both have some really unique features besides just the lenses, but looking at the lenses, they both have a 12 megapixel ultra-wide lens. For all intensive purposes is basically the same. The wide-angle lenses, you're gonna get a slightly better photo out of the Fold, being 50 megapixels versus 12 on the Flip. But again, in most common settings, you're getting a really similar photo for these, really similar processing. And as you can see here, they both are pretty solid photos. When you try to zoom in, however, that's where the Fold really starts to shine. This has a 10 megapixel 3x zoom, but again, only 10 megapixels. I wish it was a little bit better, but we're making some strides in the right direction. As far as front-facing cameras go, these both have a 10 megapixel selfie camera on this narrow screen, but if you open up the Fold, you get not a good selfie camera, right? So this is actually only 4 megapixels. You're never gonna take selfies with this. You're probably not gonna use Snapchat with this, but you might end up using this if you're in like a video call or some type of meeting when you wanna prop this up on a table, and that's where I think you might be disappointed by this lens. For photos, they've come a long way and the processing really sharpens it up quite a bit, as you can see here, but still definitely not a great photo. Now, as far as taking the photos, like I said, you have a lot of extra functionality because these phones fold. So for one, instead of using just the selfie lens, like if you don't like that one and you don't like this one, you can actually use the rear lenses on either one of these phones to take selfies. And this is something super useful. It's going to use, on the Fold, it's going to use the front display as a viewfinder, and then on the Flip, it's going to use the tiny display as a viewfinder as well. So you can see what is in frame and you can take photos, which allows you to not only take higher quality selfies, but also use that ultra-wide lens to take a larger photo with more people. And of course, we can't forget the benefit of setting these up partially open as a tripod so it can sit on a table and take a group photo or family photo or something like that. And this is actually personally something I like a little bit better about the Flip. It's easier to set up at 90 degrees just like this and actually adjust the height if you want to, so you get everybody in frame at the right angle. And you can also see everyone, you know, using a little viewfinder right there. And so taking group photos or selfies that you're in rather than just setting up a timer, it does make it a lot easier to just go and hold your hand up. It recognizes that and it takes your photo. So it should come as no surprise that the larger display on the Fold 4 is going to give you a lot of benefits when you're taking photos. So you have a preview, you can see the photos you already took, you can see dual preview of both cameras at the same time, or you can set up a lot of settings and just have much more control over your photography with the larger display. So to summarize the photography between these phones, you're going to get better photos out of the Z Fold 4 than you would the Flip, but the Flip is a very close second and still gives you a lot of those features. For example, a little tripod mode and the rear-facing, essentially viewfinder. Now, before we get into the next category of productivity, I want to talk about what both of these do really well. So they both, like I said, can use the ultra-wide lens for selfies, huge advantage to get more people into the photos. They're both IPX8 water resistant, which means they're not dust resistant, but very resistant to water. They both have 120 hertz displays. They both have Gorilla Glass Victus Plus, so they're both extremely durable. And they both have the same newest Snapdragon chip, which is to say that they have very great efficiency, and you can use this phone for a pretty long time without wasting much battery. And that's one of the biggest advantages of both of these phones over the third generation of either one of them. So that kind of leads me into productivity. In order to be productive, you need to have a good battery life. And the battery life of the Z Flip 4, from my experience, I was getting about like 8 to 8.5 hours, which is not the best out there, but substantially better than last year, where the Z Flip 3 was barely able to get through 1 day of battery life. Now, the Fold, however, has a substantially longer battery from my experience, but this, of course, depends so much on if you're using the front display or the inside middle display, whatever you want to call it. Like, depending on which one you're using, you could get a really long battery life or just a kind of long battery life. I was getting about 13 hours with this phone, so from my standards, I would say that's actually pretty good. The Fold is also better suited, in my opinion, for productivity with that taskbar on the bottom, and the Fold 4, as I mentioned, works with the S Pen, kind of adding up more and more things that make it more productive. Being that it was designed to be a phone on the outside and a tablet on the inside, it makes sense that Samsung was really striving for multitasking and productivity, and I would say that now that we're on the 4th generation of this, there are actually quite a few apps that are really optimized for this larger display. I was surprised at how many have improved since last year, and you're actually able to do a lot more with them. Even things as simple as TikTok, where you can see comments on one side and the videos on the other. Now, that's not to say that you can't be productive on the Z Flip 4, but it's definitely not designed nearly as much for productivity, for answering emails or anything like that. But one advantage, at least for me coming from a traditional slab phone, is that this phone is easier to type on. It has a normal sized display with a keyboard that's very easy to reach, whereas on the Fold, you either have a very narrow display with a really tiny keyboard, or you have a very spread out display that takes some retraining of your fingers to get used to the split keyboard, which once you get used to it, I'm sure it's very quick, but at least at first, it definitely takes some getting used to, and it's a little bit slower for me. As far as storage goes inside these, you have 256 gigs as the base storage on the Fold. It goes up to 512 and then up to 1 terabyte, which is absolutely massive. And then the Flip starts at 128, goes to 256, and 512 gigabytes as well. So if you are an absolute storage hog, you will definitely need the Fold. But there is one last thing with productivity, one huge thing, and this is Samsung DeX. As some of you might not know, Samsung has this interface that if you plug in the phone to a Windows laptop or into a TV or literally just any display for that matter, it brings up a desktop interface. Great way to get more productivity out of your phone. You can connect keyboards and mice to that and things like that, and that's something that we have on the Fold, but we don't have on the Flip. Now let's talk about not work. Let's talk about like relaxing or just casually using your phone. This is where kind of it depends on what you're looking for. If you guys remember the old Game Boys, this is like the Game Boy DS and the SP. That's kind of what it feels like to me. So the Fold 4 has a 6.2-inch display in the front and 7.6 in the middle, but don't be deceived by those numbers. The middle is obviously twice as large because they measure diagonally, and the Flip 4 has a 6.7-inch display on the front, or on the inside, I guess is what you'd call that. And then the cover display is 1.9 inches. So you're not really gonna be doing as much on the cover display, more like some type of things that you'd probably do on a smartwatch, for example. However, the Flip 4 does have a better aspect ratio for watching videos. Although it's pretty long, a lot of videos are 16:9, which means you only get a little black bar on either side, whereas on the Fold, you either get massive black bars on either side here, or big black bars on the top and the bottom if you watch it in the middle. So videos are not quite designed for this kind of squarish layout of the Fold, at least not at the moment, and so that's where you kind of have a little bit of an advantage with the Flip 4. In addition to that, any type of scrolling style website, Instagram or TikTok, again, is going to be a little bit better on the Flip, being more of the classic orientation. But if you're looking to just hang out and read or look at the news or whatever that might be, then reading is going to be substantially easier on here. I find not having to bring my eyes back for every single line, like every 3 words, and instead having an extended display definitely makes it a little bit easier when you're hanging out and reading stuff. And I haven't actually mentioned the crease yet. While it's definitely getting better on these phones, a drawback of having that horizontal crease on the Flip is that every time you scroll, you will run your finger over that. You get used to it for sure, but it's something that you are going to experience every time you use this, where on the Fold, I almost never feel the crease because it's very rare that I go back and forth like that. Much more commonly, I'm going up and down or using one or the other thumb that I never really cross that over. So that's a big advantage of the Z Fold 4. But one of the biggest advantages of the Z Flip 4 is that price. You're looking at about $1,000 at the time of launch versus $1,800 for the Fold for, but of course I will have links in the description. If you guys know Samsung like I do, you know that they are very, very prone to going on sale, so depending on when you're watching this video, it's not unlikely that you could see a couple $100s off either one of these, or they could even be similar in price, again, depending on when you're watching. But to summarize these two phones, the Fold 4 has better cameras, better multitasking, Samsung DeX, S Pen support, and more of a tablet-like experience for better productivity. But the Flip is lighter. It's smaller, it's cheaper, it's easier to type on, but it generally delivers a very classic phone experience with a few novelty things related to folding. But really, this phone is mostly for flexing on your friends, while the Fold is mostly for productivity. But between the two of these, which one do you think is the right way for a phone to fold? Leave a comment below. I'm interested to hear what you guys think of both of these. As always, if you enjoyed the video, consider liking and subscribing. I'm Mike O'Brien. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.